again. Psalms 3, 3 through 4 says, "But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain." And today, I'm just grateful for life, health, strength, grateful for my wife and my children. Um, Grateful for opportunity, grateful for grace and mercy, you know. Um, just it's just so many things to be grateful for on a daily basis. In this particular part of the scripture, um, it was just one of those things where I shared, the past couple of days I've been sharing a lot of shields of protection. And you know, a lot of that has to do with the verse that I shared the other day about Job, because when you pray for your friends, you don't just pray for, God to bless them, or when you just pray for things, I mean, pray for people, you don't just pray for, God to give them what they want, like a wishing well. One of the things you always want to be in mind, keep in mind, and you want to do to people, especially if you care about them, is pray for their protection. That you had your shield of protection around them, that you pray that, God grants them grace, that you pray that, God gives them spirit of discernment, you know, different, different centered around God keeping them so that they could be fully covered. And, you know, it's funny what you're talking about, Ontario, right? Right? Because this friend sort of recently wronged me, right? Um, and when I say wronged me, I mean, it was small stuff. It really wasn't, it was like water off a duck's back to me because I pivot relatively easily when people disappoint me or let me down, because my faith in never in man is whatever God have in store for me. And I hadn't spoken to him for a couple of days, and I feel it's something to you. Their human nature, or their reactive nature, I should say, is to sort of go into a shell and not want to face you because they either think one of two things. One, that you are going to, you know, be some type of way towards them, right? Or B, that you are going to, get angry or upset with them and they may not be in a position to deal with that right then and there. But again, like I said, it was water off a duck's back. And, the first thing he said, he's like, man, like, I apologize. He's like, man, even my wife was mad with me over what happened. Like, I shouldn't have done that and whatever. I was like, hey, don't even worry about it. I was like, it is what it is. At the end of the day, no big deal. Don't think that I act in some type of way about it. So he's like, man, I'm proud of you like this and like that and all of this. And I was like, but at the end of the day, I just showing up for work every day, and I just I just managing God's grace. And that's what I wanted to sort of say this morning. I can say it too much longer, but I don't want to be able to say it too much longer, right? But an important part of our life is not just the shield of protection that God has over our lives, but managing his grace, you know, and taking advantage of it while you have it. Because God's grace can stay over you all your life. It can stay over you for a day. It can stay over you just for an hour. But what matters is what do you do and how grateful you are when God's grace is upon you, you know? And that's just, how are we managing our relationship with our creator? When we woke up this morning was the first thing we did, open up our eyes and give thanks for that. Before we went to bed last night, was that the last thing that we did? That was the last thing that we did. Pray to him and say, hey God, thank you for making it to this day. All of that is part of management of his grace, because he gave us that day. That wasn't promised us. So again, as we go throughout this day, I just pray that we remain covered, we cover our friends, and that we manage our grace properly. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak. I pass the mic over to my sister Precious.